Once again, you are very welcome back to another episode of the Zero Lives Left podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm delighted to have you here today for an excellent episode of the podcast. As always, if this is your first time coming across this podcast, please do check out the other episodes of the podcast available on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, and of course across all of the other major podcasting platforms. We've shaken it up a little bit over the past couple of episodes. We're now bringing this podcast live to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and also to Twitter. So a huge hello to you today if you're watching on any of those channels live with us today. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask, because we are going out live, you're very welcome across LinkedIn, Facebook. We're also on YouTube to ask those questions, and we'll make sure that we pick up those questions as we move through the podcast this morning. I'm delighted to have a great episode lined up for you today. I am chatting to my good friend, my good buddy, Tom Hughes, and he's going to be talking all about his new book, which we're going to get to in a couple of moments. And it's something that I've got into over the past couple of months, the whole idea of lean. What is lean culture within business? What is it within organizations? But what is it for me? What does it mean for me personally? So we're going to talk a lot about lean today and how lean techniques within your business can really help take your business to the next level. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go right ahead on and I'm going to bring on my guest today. I want to say a huge welcome to, once again, to my good friend, my good buddy, Tom Hughes. Tom, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the podcast.
Thank you, Wayne. This is my first ever live podcast. Yeah, it'll be fun.
I was just saying, Tom, we're going out right across LinkedIn today. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. And of course, we're going to be repurposing this podcast as well onto Spotify and iTunes. So it's going out all over the place. And I was just giving our listeners a little bit of an introduction this morning about what we're going to talk about. First of all, we're going to be talking about your new book. And I got a copy of that new book recently. And I'm really excited to drill down, do a little bit of a deep dive with you this morning and talk about all... There it is. Talk about the new book. And I know it's been a bit of a passion for you. You've worked extremely hard in this book, but we're going to get to that in a couple of moments. But I want to start off by asking just a few simple questions about your business journey. Because like me, you're an entrepreneur. We've had many discussions over many cups of coffee about some different business ideas that we may have collaborated on. We bounced a few things around and we meet up brave regularly. But for our listeners' benefits, can you give our listeners a little bit of an overview on your journey, your business journey to date, Tom?
Superb. Yeah, I grew up here in Northern Ireland. I went to university in Birmingham, England, studied engineering there. I had 10 years in automotive supply chain, which is where I first encountered lean. I was working directly with the Japanese auto manufacturers and first tier supply, practicing lean techniques every day. And then I came back here to Ireland, did an MBA at Trinity College, which was an amazing experience. And I went into a management buyout of a fairly legendary hydraulics company called Olair, French originated. And we took that from a not very profitable 45 million euro business to nearly 180 million euro. And very profitable over a 10-year spell. I was supply chain director first 5 years, commercial director second 5 years. Exited that almost 10 years ago. But that was a more of a high-level job. That was we were 600 people at the end of that journey, and we had a massive culture change during that period. Since then, I had about a 5 or 6 year spell out of manufacturing engineering, software development most of that time, and came back into manufacturing about 4 years ago. That's when I first came across 2-second lean, which I now consider real lean. And I had my lean epiphany when I came across 2-second lean. It completely transformed how I viewed lean and how I coach lean with other companies. And it takes it from being a dry, boring, analytical efficiency tool to something that's truly inspirational can completely transform the culture of any organization.
And a big shout out to one of our listeners this morning, Peter Doak, who's tuned in this morning. And Peter's just saying
Hi,
that
Peter.
lean is brilliant. It's part of how Starbucks built its success. So we've got
Mm-hmm.
Peter tuned in to this episode today. Do keep in mind that if you do have any questions for Tom as we move through our live podcast this morning, please feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll pop those questions up, and hopefully Tom will be able to take some time to answer those questions. Now, Tom, you mentioned something really important there a couple of moments ago. You talked about culture, and culture is really important within all organizations. Tell me a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more about why culture is so important.
Really, everything's built on culture. Even if you're a single one-man band, your organization has a culture. You're the culture. So, culture very much bandied around term and has different meanings for different people. The way I define culture, it's your values and beliefs and your behaviors every day, and where they intersect is your culture. So you reinforce your culture every day, unwittingly or consciously. So there's an old saying. I'll try not to be too coarse, but everybody's got a whole. Every organization has a culture. Every person has a personal culture. So you can build a culture consciously, or you can unintentionally, unconsciously have a culture. And very often in larger organizations, culture's a thing that's on the wall, and a proclamation of what we would like the culture to be. But really what culture is what happens every day and what gets reinforced every day. That's culture.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about the overall aspects of lean within organizations and businesses. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but lean just isn't specifically a business or an organizational aspect. It,
Mm-hmm.
it can be part of your personal life as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah,
So let's talk a little
100%.
bit about why it's so important in people's personal lives as well.
Well, it's if we look at the technical definition of lean, which puts me to sleep, it's elimination of waste by continuous improvement. But no, when we really simplify that rather dry statement, it's just we can simplify lean down to getting rid of struggle. That to me would be the simplification of lean, elimination of struggle. Get that out of your life. And whenever you look at your everyday life, you have so many processes. Everything in life is a process or the outcome of a process. So getting the kids out to school in the morning is a process.
A
So
challenge.
yeah, and for most people, it's a challenge. So we look at that. Well, the typical things. I've been through this. I'm a father of three. Where's the school? Well, you're getting out in the morning. Where's the school bag? Oh, where's my PE gear? Blah 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 blah. All of that's a process. You can teach kids lean, and so when you start to, for most people, that dysfunction is every day, and they think they just become accustomed to this kind of dysfunction all the time. Comfortable in the dysfunction is the term I use. But when you start to see waste and you start to see struggle, and then you decide, oh, I can fix what bugs you, is a Paul Akers 2-second lean phrase, but very pertinent about simplifying lean. So, you can really say lean is seeing waste and seeing struggle and fixing it. So where does that not apply? And what business does that not apply in? What business doesn't have struggle or friction? What person's life doesn't have struggle or friction? Where are my car keys? you know, when my daughter tries to use we have a Ninja cooker. How do I use this thing?
Yeah.
And she's forgotten again. Oh, can we put the answer where the question is? Can we put some instructions there? So yeah, everything's a process. It's
Yeah, and
everywhere.
it is absolutely everywhere. And even this morning, before I came on to do this podcast, I'm conscious when I woke up this morning. I'm trying to think in my head. I'm trying to run through all the steps that I need to go through in order to get the light switched on, to get the camera working,
Yeah.
to get the background set going, to get just to get everything right before we go live and we hit that
Mm-hmm.
button. And it is a series of processes. Now, you
It
mentioned
is.
a couple of moments ago, tell our listeners a little bit about Paul Aker. Who
Yeah.
is Paul? Tell us a little bit about Paul. I know I've been following Paul as well. There was an app that came out. I think I downloaded it. It was the 2-second lean.
Yeah, it's the Lean Play app.
Lean Play app.
My book's just been put on it yesterday, which is great. It's a real honor that I'm on that platform. But Paul Akers, I joke he's like my surrogate dad. But he says back he's a very young father. But no, Paul's been a massive influence on my life in the last few years. I consider him a friend, but he originated this 2-second lean concept, which was really the simplification of lean and taking all the consultant speak and complexity and how can I put it? The divorcing of the process of lean from the people doing the job properly. Paul really came up with a simplified format of doing that. So for an organization, it's about a morning meeting where you teach your people to see waste and you build culture. And then you have a 3S improvement time where your people apply that learning and fixing their processes and fix what bugs them, improving every single day. And then you do prefer videos of your improvements in a WhatsApp group. And the next day in your morning meeting, you celebrate that. In a simplified way, that is the 2-second lean system. And Paul came up with that. And instead of the traditional way of doing lean would be an elite few consultants or facilitators doing lean, in this approach, every single person in the organization does lean. It's total engagement. And that's the difference. This lean is a culture-based leadership challenge, where in the former approach, people thought you could buy lean. You could buy in some consultants. They would fix your process for you, walk out the door, and a very, how can I say, transient thing. It didn't affect your culture. It was a tool. So that's the big difference. And Paul mentors me in so many ways. Very grateful to have him in my life. Fantastic human being. And he has thousands of people around the world that feel the same way.
Absolutely. So lean is an ongoing process. It's not just a one-off. It's not just about bringing the high-paid consultants into the organization, making some little changes along the way, and then they sort of hit the high road. It is really an ongoing process. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's what it is. And when you decide to take this approach, you basically say to yourself, right, we're going to have these morning meetings. We're going to have this improvement time. We're going to do it for the foreseeable future. We could say forever, but the goal, or let's say the gift that you get back in return, is you can have an organization where literally everybody is switched on. People are tapping their fingers on the steering wheel coming to work because you're engaging with your entire workforce. Like the way I have taken Paul's model and maybe even simplified it further, this is about engagement first, because mistake people make with lean, they look for results now. That doesn't work. That's why one of the reasons it fails. Or they look for improvements now. And again, that doesn't work, not in a sustained way. The whole thing's built upon engagement, and the engagement happens through having a morning meeting where everyone gets to contribute. You're developing your people every day. You rotate the person who takes the morning meeting, they get developed. Your whole company gets to lift their own capabilities individually. Improvement starts with I there. But that's the process. Engagement, improvement, results. That's how it works, and that's how it sustains. And that's a very simple form of the process I put forward. Improvement starts with I.
Now, before we jump right into the book, a big shout out to Martin Gilchrist. Martin's missing the live this morning. He's got to attend a meeting, but he's looking forward to tuning back in later. Yeah, once again, Martin, thank you for stopping by this morning.
Thanks, Martin.
Looking forward to hearing your feedback. Once again, if you have any questions, Martin, for Tom, you want to link up with Tom, please do connect with Tom on LinkedIn. That's a great place to find him. He always is over there and he's talking about lots of cool stuff, in particular lean. Now, Tom, let's dive into the book. Let's talk about the book. The book's available on Amazon. It's available for people to get access to.
Yeah, and as I said, we just put it on the Lean Play app, which is on all the app stores. It's available it's an Audible clone, basically, but it's available for free on that app. So
fantastic.
fire
So
away and get it
the
there.
book is called Improvement Starts with me, you, everybody. Improvement starts with a practical guide to building an extraordinary lean culture. Yeah. So tell us about the book. I was sort of scanning the book over the past couple of days. I'm going to order up a printed copy off Amazon because I like the printed copy. Summer holidays are coming around. I'm going to be going off and I'm looking something really good to read on the summer holidays. But I sort of looking through it, and there's a couple of things that sort of jumped out at me initially. You've broken the book down very well. It's very digestible. It's very easy to follow. For somebody who's never ever heard of lean before, or maybe has heard that term before, it's a business term. What does it really mean? You've kind of broken it down into the 5 C's, and you've talked about the first C, the second C, the third C, the fourth C, and then the 5th C. Take our listeners through what the 5 C's are, Tom.
Well, basically, before we even get to the 5 C's, I'll just take a few seconds to explain the origin of the title. So improvement starts with I. Whenever I first came across 2-second lean, I was working on a company transformation here in Northern Ireland. I got 2-second lean immediately and I wanted to do it. But the ownership team of the company were like, what, an hour? At that time, we were taking a half-hour morning meeting and a half-hour improvement time. 1 hour out of 8, we're not going to be banging widgets. And I was like, how do I persuade these people to do this? So I reached out to Paul. And I didn't know it at the time. And in fact, I didn't even realize it till a couple of months ago when the book was finished. The title comes from this very simple concept. So I exchanged with Paul and said, right, how do I persuade this management team to do this? And he said, no, you don't persuade anybody. So he said, no, you start with yourself. Improvement. He didn't use the term improvement starts with I, but he said, start with your own waste. You have enough waste for 10 lifetimes. You start improving that every day and you start getting excellent about everything you do, and you will pull the rest of the organization with you. Start with your own waste. It's pull, not push. You will never push lean on anybody. Pull, not push. So there we go. That's where the title came from. And I started doing that straight away. And I've done it every day since.
Tom, I love that. That is absolutely fantastic. I mean, we've all got so much waste about and so much stuff going on. I mean, and really that's one of the most important things that you've just said there. And it's one of the things that I'm really going, wow, light bulb moment. Start with myself.
We will get to the 5 C's, but let's look at this waste subject, because we talk about waste. I'll ask you a question, Wayne. If you were going to put up a picture, if you decided, this evening you're going to put a picture up in the house, how long would it take you?
Ooh. I am not a DIY sort of a guy, so it probably would never get done. I'd end up getting somebody in to put it up, Tom. Or I procrastinate. I'd say, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. Right. I'll do that the next day.
Let's take all the procrastination out of the equation. You're going to do it.
Okay.
How long would it take you? Just a guess. 5 minutes?
Yeah.
3 hours?
Probably a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe.
So let's look at that process and go, right, we'll define value and non-value, which non-value is waste, value is not waste. So in that process, how much value do you think what percentage of that time did you add value? Real value. And I'll go even more detailed. That's when something changed, something physically changed that a customer would be willing to pay for, or, you were happy happened.
It's a good question.
Right. Well, for our listeners, we'll cut to the chase. I'm putting up the picture. I either drilled in the wall or I banged the nail in with a hammer. That was the only piece of value added that happened in that whole process. So when we say all the running around, finding the tools, deciding this and all of that, total waste. So when you look at a
Okay.
process like that, well over 99% of the time was non-value added. So when you start to see life like that, then you start to see waste everywhere.
So
So
the actual value, let me get this right. The actual value is the picking up of the hammer, hammering
no,
that nail into the wall, and putting the
no,
picture.
just that
No,
bit, just
just
that bit.
so just putting the
Just,
picture up.
just yeah,
Okay.
because you could walk around with a hammer. You could have to go over there to get the hammer. The hammer could be half an hour away. All
in,
waste.
in the back of the shed.
Yeah, finding the
Okay.
hammer is waste.
Going to B and Q
Deciding
and getting
what
the
tool
right
to use
screws.
is waste.
Okay.
And we have 8 wastes in lean for
Okay.
physical processes. I go into the book that there's all kinds of wastes. That's another podcast.
Okay.
but
So
but
it's about taking all of the waste out of it, and the actual value is
and
in.
and it also never ends. That's the other
Okay.
best part of this. That people go, oh, well, I've improved it. Yeah, but like there's still waste in there. There's still non-value added, no matter what the process is. So that's what we're doing in the morning meeting every day. Is
Okay.
we're helping our people understand where the waste is and where the struggle is. And like people misunderstand lean. Like for example, I've been asked even in the last few weeks several times, what about a unionized environment? How do we do waste lean there? It's easy. You're not asking people to work harder. You're asking people to struggle less. What's not to like about that? It's like, so, dear union, we want your people to work less hard.
Yeah, we
That's
want
what
them.
this process is about. When we take all the struggle and inefficiencies out, life's easier. So there's another phrase in lean. Lean is hard work that makes life easy. So we work hard at improving the process to make the process easy. So things get better every day. So hopefully you get the idea. So the 5 C's, we rush into that: candor, commitment, coaching, consistency, and continuous learning. Candor, very quickly, is just about it's the plank that all lean is built on. So candor is a rare commodity in today's society. People confuse being nice with being good, and they're very, very different. So we need to take this. Candor is about being direct, being able to surface problems safely in an organization culture. It's not about being nasty or rude to people. This phrase that I was able, at another mentor years ago, taught me this phrase: speak without offending, listen without defending. So candor needs to be reinforced in your culture. And again, that happened in meeting. So we are reinforcing these cultural aspects every day. We're not putting them up on a notice board and leaving them there. We're reinforcing them every day. So that's candor. And in candor, there's also there's basically 3 sections in that chapter. The next part is about change the people or change the people. Again, tender subject. But if you're a leader and you're going to do this process, you need to look at yourself and be candid with you. Why are you doing this? Have you got the characteristics to make this work? What about your team? In my own experience, you look at your team and go, he's good, she's good. Problem. You need to just get that, change the people or change the people. Because if you're misaligned at a senior level here, this will fail. You have to have everybody at the top table on board with this. And then finally, you're looking at for example, your key performance indicators, how you pay people. You need to assess all that before you even start this journey. So that counter is very important. It took too long over explaining it, but that's the book.
Now,
Commitments about,
before you
yeah.
move on, I want to make a huge shout out to Denise Devlin. Denise popped in this morning. Thank you so much, Denise, for your comment. We really appreciate that. Engagement, improvement, results. So positive and perfect for teams. And
Yeah.
Denise has also said, I've heard the term lean, which many people have, Tom. They've heard that term before, but she's now intrigued. She's going to
Yeah.
order the book. So
That's
fantastic.
great. I'd like to play a part in demystifying the term lean.
And
And
I think
at
that's
the end of the day, getting rid of waste in your process, your life, it's a simple thing, and anybody can do it. I actually do think, and maybe I'll be the guy to write it. There's a home version of lean that really needs to be written,
I love that.
and every person version of lean.
Yeah.
It has this image of being a
Business.
business
Yeah.
organization thing, and it is in a way, but when you take it back to yourself and you start seeing waste everywhere, then yeah, it's an every person thing and an every business thing and every organization thing, literally.
It really
So
is. It really is.
everybody's
And
got a process. Everybody's got an outcome of a process. So yeah, the commitment part's about understanding what you're getting into. And very simply, if you're looking at investing half an hour a day in this, all you got to do is get about 8% better, and that time's free forever. So it's not the investment people think it is. And then you're deciding you're making the commitment to yourself that this is going to be your number one priority. And that's a hard thing. It's another reason why it fails, because people decide they want to delegate it. That's a very common approach. Buy or delegate lean. So the top people aren't practicing it. It's another, if people coming from a larger organization, the reason why most big transformational initiatives fail is because management support it. They don't embody it. They don't lead by example. It's everyone wants everyone else to change is one of my favorite phrases, but they're not doing it themselves. And that carries further down into the organization, not just the leadership. So everybody's there going, I'd be happy if if the people weren't late with their orders, I'd be fine. You know,
yeah, yeah.
but they're not looking in their own span of control about what they can do. And that's again where it all comes down to culture. Because as a business leader and as a management team and as individuals, we need to reinforce those expectations and behaviors every day and celebrate when we're getting it right. And it is, in my opinion, it is devastatingly simple. But the part, again, I love this. When I was researching the book, I found out that the word priority was only used in the singular up until about the middle of the 20th century. So we have this priorities thing, which basically denigrates the word. And when we're looking at being world class, I used the analogy in the book. I was coaching Black Box in Belfast around this subject last year. And when they first came to me and it's, all right, okay, we want to do lean and we want to be world class. It's like going to the gym and you see somebody with a 12 pack of abs and you go, wow, I want those. I want a set of abs like that. You don't get to have that if you're like putting that as one of your priorities. If you're like having a few nights on the beer and hitting McDonald's a few times a week, you don't get a 12 pack of abs. You have to make it your priority is the only way you get to be world class at anything. So you can use lean as the vehicle that takes your company wherever you want it to go, whether that be, the most profitable, the biggest rug company in the UK, for example, very local here in Newry, awesome lean company. Or you're going to be the best product development company in the world, but you use lean to get you there. So you put your people and your priority and developing your people as your number one priority, and all the rest will follow. But what people typically do, they put all their emphasis on the results. Remember this again, looking at the results that have happened, and the emphasis is wrong. Their emphasis is on the outcome, not what's driving the outcome. And in every organization, your engagement with your people and the quality of their skill set at understanding what they're doing and eliminating waste and improving the experience for the customer and all of those things. If you're doing all of those things, well, what's going to happen with your results? So that's where the emphasis needs to be.
So lean then is the vehicle. That's a
The
great way to
lean's the
sum it up.
vehicle that takes you
It's
where you want to go. Yeah.
it's the vehicle. Fantastic. So another big shout out to Denise. This is awesome info. I'm getting insights. So glad I was guided to watch this live. Thank
And
you,
I,
Wayne
and I only
and
got
Tom.
the two C's. So,
We only got one. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to the next C. Then
yeah.
is coaching, which people are
Yeah.
familiar with. People have heard before the term coaching. Tell us a little bit about that when it comes to lean.
Well, every great lean organization has a really great coach at the top of it, and generally a bunch of coaches that have developed over that time. So that chapter of the book is about developing your coach team. So it's about developing a critical mass of people in an organization that are lean crazy people like me, and they're practicing lean every day. They're leading by example, and they understand how to coach others. And again, as part of the pull not push strategy, you create that learning club, is the vehicle I use here, where we're, say, having a 6 week intensive Friday afternoon. We're going to bring 10 or 15% of the organization together, and we're going to learn lean before we start that morning meeting process and get those people practicing lean at a high level, and the other people being curious about what they're doing. So that's part of this pull not push process. You don't want to push, you never push lean onto an organization. You create that pull. And a key part of pull is curiosity. So I talk about in the book that somebody in my life has a condition called PDA. It's pathological demand avoidance. And I learned with them, carrot and stick doesn't work. So the traditional management method that modern companies still use is carrot and stick. And what I learned with having this experience was that didn't work, and you have to use curiosity to create any desire for them to learn anything or even participate in anything. And what I started to understand was that's not just people with PDA. We're all like that. If you the exam that you crammed for that you couldn't remember a thing now, yeah. But if it's something you're passionate about, you want to learn and you want to be. So again, on the pull not push part, it's creating that advocate group, that critical mass. So if you're a business leader, you're not just doing it by yourself. You've got a lot of people carrying this load when you go into this proper morning meeting process, and you're creating organizational curiosity because people are looking at these people and going, look at all that stuff they're doing. I want to do that. That's how you do it. So coaching, but I'll pick one little thing out of coaching that fascinates me, and I've seen it done wrong so many times. So you're a leader in a company or a senior person in a company, and somebody comes to you with an improvement idea, and they've never done it before, and you go, oh, well, yeah, that's all right, yeah. I think you should do it like this. It could be better if you did it like that. Or worse still, no. I coach people not to use the word no. So so you got a newbie that wants to improve stuff, and they come with their idea. Just say yes, unless it's going to be denigrate quality or cost the company a pile of money, or let people fail. It's an important part of the growth process. If people get their solutions, let's say, negatively watered on, then the next one will be a long time coming. And second, when you let people make mistakes, they grow. The growth comes from the mistake. If you're short circuiting that process, then you're short circuiting the development of your people. So, coaching is so important in this process, but it's fun. And the sort of framework in the book is to give people a guideline, a very actually specific set of guidelines of how you do that process. So yeah,
And I love that, Tom. Just to sort of take a sort of a break there on that. I love that idea about don't use no. I mean, we can all remember times when we were with companies and organizations where we had an idea that we thought was going to improve the organization. Maybe it was going to improve efficiency or culture or something like that. Maybe we had, when we were growing up as kids, we came to our parents with an idea. We went to the teacher, or we went to one of our peers with an idea, and they said no. And that no can have a real detriment impact on that person, as you rightly say, coming forward in the future with their ideas and their suggestions.
Yeah, it's just about encouragement and understanding that that's part of the process. So even if you know 20 better answers, let that person express themselves. Let that person learn the answers. You don't learn if somebody just gives you the solution. It's also disrespectful. Listen, respect for people is a huge part of learning. So whenever you give the solution, you're in a way disrespecting them because they have the solution. You just have to, your job is to support them getting there as a coach. And the long-term results of that's what Toyota do. Like a lot of this thinking comes from Toyota. So their whole management development program is around challenging. Like it's not easy. This is the other thing. They'll challenge a new engineer, for example, with projects. Right, go get that done. But it's not like a Western style of leaving them to it. They're supported and coached, but they're under a lot of pressure. And I see lean as deeply spiritual, and there's a spiritual expression: without friction, there is no growth. So there's nothing in the world that grows without friction. And the challenges that you encounter are how you grow. So it's creating a challenge environment, not like leaving people to drown, and helping them and nurturing them to grow. And when you can do that in an organization, you end up with a bunch of very, very capable people who are happy as well. Like
Absolutely.
one of the lean expressions is you can measure lean progress by the number of smiles you see when you walk around a company. And that's so true.
So true. So true. I want to say a huge hello this morning to Shane Meehan. Thanks for joining us on the podcast this morning. Shane says, completely agree with Tom. Genuine commitment from senior management is critical to embed lean culture within an organization, but you need lean champions to create and maintain a lean culture. Absolutely.
And that's what that part of the coaching chapter of the book is about, creating that bunch of advocates, the apostles, the lean apostles that are going to help carry this through the early stages.
Absolutely. So let's take it on to the next two C's, Tom. We're getting some amazing insight here this morning. Great feedback from the people listening in this morning.
Really great.
Really appreciate all the comments. Please keep those comments coming in. If there's a question you'd like to ask Tom today on the podcast, don't forget we're going out live across YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter this morning. There's going to be a replay of this podcast available on Spotify and iTunes. So if you miss it, the replay, of course, will be available on LinkedIn later on today if you want to pick that up, and Tom will be checking in. If there is any questions, he'll pick that up. But if you do want to connect with Tom, I'll have his details available later on. You can connect with Tom on LinkedIn. So Tom, take us to the next fourth C, which is consistency.
Consistency is I had a lot of the title for this chapter could have been a bunch of cuss, but I actually chose consistency because it sounded boring. I deliberately chose it because it sounded boring, because it is the repetition part of the recipe. So you need to do this every day, and you need to have a structure. So our structure that we advocate is a morning meeting where we're teaching people to see waste. We're building our culture. We're celebrating the success from yesterday's improvements. In a nutshell, that's what the morning meeting is. And I give a lot of recipe examples for the morning meeting because it's not the same in every organization to be effective. So, the company that I'm a business partner in, Lumen Electronics, we've 6 people and we're practicing this. Your morning meeting for 6 people isn't the same as your morning meeting for 100. If you've got remote workers, you need another set of ingredients and so on. So we talk about that in detail. And I know literally, won't say hundreds, but many dozens of organizations who are doing this all over the world that I'm closely networked with. So I've been able to distill that down into a lot of, a pick and mix of things for your morning meeting. And then the next part, related to coaching, you have your improvement time. and 3S, which is sweep, sort, and standardize. It's a problem-solving methodology. So you are doing that for the second part of your consistency routine. And in there's a bunch of behaviors and processes about how to do that properly. But consistency is what that's about. It's about doing it every day. You're going to face challenges, which is where your commitment comes back in. It's like, oh, I don't know what to improve now. That's a typical one. And that's a signal there's a growth opportunity. So I don't know what to improve now. Well, your process isn't perfect. That's for sure. So we need to deepen our training and our knowledge so that we can get to see the waste because it's there. So that's really what consistency is about, but it's a critical part of the recipe.
So it's all about sort of, and this is something that even in my own business and my own personal life, I try to be consistent in what I'm doing at all times. But sometimes I sort of fall off the wagon, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And probably we're all guilty of that sometimes. And one of the things I've been looking at is taking that one step back in your process there, Tom, and having a coach there in behind me to
Yeah,
hold me
it's very,
accountable.
I'd recommend it highly. Yep, very, very much so. So I wrote the book in a manner that somebody could pick up the book. The book's free in so many ways, and people can get real value from the book. It'll, if you want to do this, I'm such a beautiful experience being me right now because I'm getting, actually, I haven't even launched the book yet. I'm getting a few messages every day from the book's really helped me. It's so much better. I can do that. Like, it's the value's there, and people are telling me that. But if you want to do this properly, especially if you've got a decent sized organization, I'd highly recommend you use a coach because somebody like me that's done it a few times, and I've done change initiatives, well, easily half a dozen I've done now. And you can save yourself a lot of heartache and mistakes. Plus, you've got somebody to kick your bottom
And
if you're
hold you
not
accountable,
keeping up
which is
to it.
so
Yeah.
important. The accountability of this is so important, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a big part.
Now, let's talk about the final C, which is a C that I absolutely love. I'm sometimes addicted to this continuous learning. I mean, I just find in my world, and I'm sure it's the same in your world, a lot of people who are listening in today to this podcast, continuous development, continuous learning is really important. And that's the fifth C.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I joke. It's my joke that lean's spelt wrong. It's got an R missing. So it really is about that. Lean
Learn.
is about a
Yeah.
continuous learning organization. And so, if you're getting better and better and better and better and better every day, if you don't continuously learn, you will hit that roadblock of what do I improve next? Because you don't have the skills or the knowledge to see the waste and know what to do next. That's what the basic concept of continuous learning is. When I was writing the book, I'd finished the book at consistency, and then I can't even remember why. So there was a spell before I was totally hooked, and we came across a couple of really important learnings in our own experience at Lumen that I wrote essays on that turned into the last chapter. So we have one that's your 8 wastes are not Toyotas, which we did the Association of Manufacturing Excellence are a global organization for lean. And we were privileged to do a virtual tour with Paul Akers and them around this subject. So this one was lean heresy because traditionally you had 8 wastes that were well defined. And we were saying, no, in a third millennium company, the wastes are different. So we're an electronic engineering firm. All of our values added at a computer. There is no real physical process for a lot of what value we add. So we identified waste within that process. So when now the book's out there, I'm telling people, find your own waste and name it. So, if you're doing podcasts, right, well, where's the waste? So, oh, I didn't understand this, that, and the other. Let's have a checklist. Everybody that participates going to get clear instructions about what's going to happen before we start, etc.
Yeah.
And the waste aspect of that is fascinating when you get going on it. So one of our biggest wastes are meetings or excess emails or excess communication with a customer that doesn't generate value, that wastes everywhere. So that was part of our continuous learning at Lumen. Now we're sharing that with everybody in the world. So the other one is around standards. I've we've software that we developed called Gemba Docs, which has been another part of my personal lean journey. Now we've got about 70 customers around the world who are all lean companies using Gemba Docs. It's Gemba means workplace in Japanese, and Gemba Docs is about being able to produce easy standard operating procedures and work instructions for completing tasks. And it's super easy to use. That was another typical lean thing. It used to take an afternoon to do a really basic process. Now you can do it in a few minutes with Gemba Docs, and anybody can use it. It's been a really enlightening experience. So I wrote part of the last chapter is about the benefits of standards and the democratization of standards that Gemba Docs lets you do. It's cool.
So lean is absolutely everywhere. It exists in all aspects of our life, and it also exists in all aspects of our business. And it's something that we need to look at. Now, before we finish up, I always like to finish up with a little bit of a summary. But in your case, we're not going to do a summary. Your background is very much you're an entrepreneur at heart, Tom. I know this. We've sat down over many's of bagels in the Brick Cafe, and we've talked about ideas. We've sort of bounced a few things off the wall. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs listening into the podcast, business owners, maybe people who are starting out on their business journey, graduates, maybe considering taking that first step into the world of entrepreneurship. I want to ask you before we finish up today, Tom, what will be your top 3 tips to date? I'm putting you on the spot here. Just throwing this sort of curveball at you, but what will be the sort of 3 things that you think is really important for somebody starting out on their business journey today, or a business who's been established for a number of years? What will be the 3 things that people need to take on board?
That's a great question. Total curveball as well, by the way. My first tip would be stop. Stop doing.
Okay.
My biggest, let's say, the parts of my career that haven't gone so well was due to me not stopping, being so action orientated that just diving on in. And I had a great expression I heard the other day: "There's nothing worse in life than running very fast in the wrong direction."
Yeah.
So you can work really hard in the wrong direction and get absolutely nowhere.
True. So true.
So learning to stop. A great book, The Road Less Stupid. And fundamentally, that book advises you to spend a lot of time thinking. So I think whenever people are able to take a helicopter view and go, is what I'm working on the right thing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing. And there's so many deep questions in there. Am I energized by this? Is this something I love doing? Because if it isn't, don't. No money in the world is going to pay you for that. So as you can probably tell, this subject energizes me immensely. And in engaging with Gemba Docs customers is one of my favorite things. So, good. So that's first one. Stop. Make sure you know that what you're doing is the right thing you're doing. Second, only do stuff that is fully energizing to you, and minimize the rest. That's waste again. That's waste of your life, hours that you never get back. So do that energizing subject. And the third one is maximize the value that you're giving people. And don't really worry that much about getting paid for it. Maximize the value is the most important thing. My guru, I'm a deeply spiritual person. I have a guru. Yogananda is my guru, and he talks a lot about business. And he says the purpose of business is to create as much benefit for as many people as possible.
It's so true.
So when you take that approach, only good things happen.
That is so true. Tom, those are 3 excellent tips. And they're So beneficial in so many different ways. And I like how you mapped it back to lean in the second tip as well about the waste. I thought that was nice. That was nice. And it's nice for people to think about that. But before we finish up, let's sort of give people an idea. Where can they find the book? I've got the name up on screen here. Improvement Starts with I, a practical guide to building an extraordinary lean culture. It's available now on Amazon. But where else can people get it? You mentioned the Paul Aker app as well.
Yeah, the Lean Play app. My software company built a Lean Play app, which is great. It's good karma because we have my books going on there, which is fantastic. That would be my recommended way to digest the book. Download the Lean Play app, and it's for free on there and Audible. And I have a website, improvementstartswithI.com, which it should be live next week, where every which way of digesting Improvement Starts with I is available. I'm going to put it on YouTube for free and on audio as well. All of that will be happening next week. But right now, Lean Play app and Amazon.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So check out the website, check out Amazon. This is the book that I definitely think is going to change your business and your organization. But not only that, there's it on screen. I love the idea that Tom is saying that there might be future books for lean in the home, which I think is fantastic. I know many people who could benefit of that, particularly
how you lay out your kitchen properly, for example.
Yeah. Like all the waste that you have in your home. It's absolutely, we were talking.
It's fun. It's a fun process.
Well, look, Tom, I want to thank you for your time today to join me on this episode of the podcast. I want to thank everybody for their input today. We had lots of people joining the podcast, which was fantastic. Yeah, no, it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to do a full summary of the podcast, which is going to be available on the podcasted version that you can pick up on Spotify and iTunes. So there will be a summary, a little bit of an extra bit there that's going to be bolted on. So if you've listened to the podcast already here today live, I do recommend that you pick up the replay of the podcast, because there is going to be that extra bit where I'm going to be doing my summary of what we talked about today on the show. I have 2 pages of notes, Tom, right in front of me here, and I'm even thinking about lean steps for the podcast. I mean, that's so important, because there's a lot of waste with the podcast. I'm going, there is so much waste with the podcast, so I need to start thinking about that. And one of the things you'll be impressed with this, Tom, the reason why I'm doing the live podcast, or one of the reasons that I'm doing the live podcast now, is it gives me the opportunity to cut down on some of the waste, because what I can do now is I can repackage this, I can repurpose it into the audio version, and I get two podcasts for the price of one, effectively. So I think that's a good example of
it's extra value.
It's extra
value. Same effort.
Absolutely. But there's much more work to be done. Also, I want to say, if you do want to connect with Tom, please do check out his LinkedIn profile. Tom is probably one of the most approachable people I've come across in my journey to date. We meet up regularly. We have coffees. He's a fantastic man just to sit down and shoot the breeze with. So if you're not connected with Tom, please do that. I'm going to make along to one of Tom's yoga sessions. I know that I've said that before. I do want to come. We haven't talked about that today. But
Sunday mornings, Wayne, we're starting our meditation chats and qigong all happening at our place on Sunday mornings. Big part of it.
I think that's another podcast that we could potentially do in the future. It
certainly is. My favorite recent quote is, "The calm mind gets things done."
The calm mind gets things done. I think that's a great place to leave it at today. The calm mind gets things done. Once again, Tom, thank you so much for taking time. Yes, I did too. Thank you for taking time to join me on this episode of the podcast. Once again, we're going to pick this up again in the future. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Please check out Tom's book if you haven't already checked this book out. Please do go and check that out. It's a fantastic read. It's a fantastic resource. And Tom talks about all things lean in that book. Please don't forget to keep an eye on the upcoming podcasts that will be coming your way. If you'd like to join me on an episode of the live podcast, please do reach out and get in touch. And I'll see you next time for another episode of the Zero Lives Left podcast.